Hi, everyone. Here we are at Moving Traditions again, coming to you with our second video installment to help you all get the teens in your groups to participate, open up, maybe come off on mute, and to really have conversations with them. So we are each going to play the part of group leaders at various points, and the rest of us will be participants throughout this next video segment. And to get us started, Julia.
Thank you so much. So today we're going to do an activity called Roses and Thorns. The rose being the sweet, lovely part of something that's occurred in your life over the past couple of weeks. And the thorn being something that's a little prickly, a little unpleasant, maybe annoying, however you want to categorize it. So in the chat, I'm going to ask that you tell me what your rose has been over the last several weeks. So I'm going to wait as those come in. I see that Daniel is enjoying running. That's amazing. And I see that Pam has been ordering Chipotle for lunch. That's also amazing. Pam, tell me, what have you been ordering? What's your choice of food?
The burrito bowl. I love that burrito bowl with all the stuff in it. It's delicious, right?
Good. Delicious. I totally agree. Amazing. Thank you for sharing. And Eve has been playing with her cats. Also awesome. Great way to make the time go by. And if you could now share with me your thorn, your not as pleasant thing that has been happening in your life over the past couple of weeks. Just going to wait for those answers to come in the chat. I see that Pam is missing dance class in person. Daniel is missing his friends, and Eve says when it gets so dark so early in the winter. Eve, I totally understand. It's hard. What do you miss doing the most since it's getting darker earlier?
Less time outside. It's cold. It's just hard. It's just depressing and sad.
Yeah, it's hard. It's definitely adds to the complications that we've been facing this year, but we all have our roses, which is amazing. So this type of activity is a wonderful way to get your participants to share in a way that might be a little lower barrier and more comfortable. It also opens up a space to allow them to show their vulnerabilities. And this is the opportunity for the group leader to hear and validate thoughts that come from the participants. So a little bit of repeating some of the things that they might have written in the chats or opening up their comments for conversation is a great way for teens to feel heard, validated, and safe to share their thoughts. And I'm going to turn this over back to Pam.
So another way to get teens to participate and to get everyone's voice in the room is to ask them a question like I'm about to do and have them write down the answer before sharing. It gives them a chance to think about it for a second. So I'm going to ask all of you to answer the following question. What is something that you've learned about yourself during the pandemic? What's something you've learned during the pandemic? And this can be anything you want it to be. There's no right or wrong answers. The only thing I ask is that it has to be a sentence with a period at the end of it. You're going to write down what I've learned during the pandemic is, and it has a period at the end. Write an answer. When you're done, turn your paper over and look back up at the camera so I know that you're done and we can go on. Okay, great. So the way this game is going to be played is I'm going to call on each of you and ask you to unmute. You're going to turn your paper over, read your answer, and then I'm going to go on to the next person, okay? So Eve, can you tell us your answer?
That I'm okay when I'm by myself.
You learned you're okay by yourself. Wow, what an important lesson. Thank you, Eve. Daniel.
I like to walk and talk at the same time.
Is that something you didn't know before?
I didn't realize how much I like to do that.
Okay, thank you. Julia, what did you learn?
I love routine and I love venturing out of the house more than I realized.
Yeah, right. Amazing, all the different things we've learned. So a question like that, what is amazing about it is people can share at whatever level they want, right? They can go deep or they can be surface. They get to choose how they want to participate and how they want to show up in that moment and how brave they're feeling on that particular day. But it does get everyone's voice in the room. You could also use this technique with writing down an answer with a silly question. What Netflix show are you currently binging, and have everyone answer. So you can choose how to use it, but the important piece is that everyone gets to participate and actually speak out loud on unmute at one point of the day. Okay, I'm going to pass it off to Daniel.
Thank you. So one of the things that I find incredibly challenging about being in a Zoom environment is that you don't have the dynamic of people talking over other people or people interrupting other people or people laughing at other people. But something that you can do to change that is what I'm about to do now. So I'm taking an example from the competition session of Chevet, which is all about winning and losing. And I'm going to ask two of you to unmute. So let's just take Eve and Julia, and please unmute. And I am going to ask a question about competition. And I want, whenever you think of something, just blurt it out. Whoever blurts it out first, that's good. If you interrupt each other, that is totally fine. Okay, what is one thing that people do when they win?
Bragging rights.
Cheer. Cheer.
I love, Eve, how you threw your hands out. You kind of like did a little bragging, like there's something that happened. Great. So let me ask another question. What is one thing that people do when they lose?
They cry.
I was going to say the same thing. They sulk.
But Julia said it first.
Julia
Okay.
got it first.
Anyway, so you can see how just using the little dynamic of asking two people to unmute creates a little bit of dramatic tension. You see who's going to answer first, how are they going to answer, how are they going to draw attention to themselves with their body, all of those things. So another trick that I found to be really incredibly useful is when you have the challenge of getting somebody who hasn't participated to participate in a conversation, how can you get them to do it? So now I'm going to turn my attention to Pam for a second, and I'm going to be thinking, you know what, Pam was probably listening to this thing about winning and losing and thinking herself about what she thought about it. But Pam is also probably hesitant to say what is on her mind. So here's how I'm going to do it. Okay, I want everybody to think about how people react when they win and when they lose, and about how you personally react when you win and when you lose. Now, once you have an idea in your mind about this question, let me know by simply holding up a finger so I know that you have thought about this question. Winning and losing. How do you feel about winning and losing? Once you have the thought in your head, let me know by holding up a finger. Okay, great. Julia, do you have a thought in your mind yet? Okay, great. Pam, how you doing? You're sort of there? Okay. Pam, I'd love to hear a little bit about what that thought is.
So I'm not entirely sure, but a little bit what Eve said. You know, when I do win something, I definitely express it physically. I definitely move. I definitely would throw my hands up in the air or something like that. When I lose, I don't like to be around people, I think.
Great. I understand that. So that was a fantastic example. Thank you all so much for playing along. One of the things that I just noticed in leading that is, first of all, unlike writing where everybody goes off in their little space, this one forces us to kind of look around at the screen and see who is doing what. And it also allows for a little bit of peer pressure. So I could see that, like, once somebody put their finger up, that puts the pressure on everybody else. Well, do I really have the thought in my head? And it also can be helpful for you as a group leader to say, you know what? You may not hear from everybody who puts their finger up, but you will know that people are thinking about the same thing. And that in and of itself is a wonderful dynamic. And now I'm going to pass it to Eve.
Okay, so one more method that we are going to show you today is something that we call the popcorn method or Jiffy Pop. And if you use that terminology with your groups, they will understand what it means, so you won't have to explain it every time. So I'm going to share my screen right now because we are doing the racial justice lesson. And I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to have everybody read these racial justice quotes, and then I'm going to ask them a question. We just read a whole lot of quotes on that Padlet, and now I'm going to ask you each to kind of think about which one was your favorite, which one resonated most with you, and we're going to use the Jiffy Pop method, okay? So Pam, you go first.
So there was one by the Rothstein person who talked about they're like both sides of their family feeling oppression and relating to that. And I think I relate to that because I have family members who escaped the Holocaust, or some who didn't escape the Holocaust. So that's kind of makes sense for me and my family. So what am I supposed to do now?
Call on someone else in the room.
Oh, okay. I'm going to call on Julia.
So for me, the quote or the story that stood out to me was about the young woman who comes from a mixed racial and ethnic background, and how she found herself after being physically in a spot where her father, who happened to be African American, took her where he grew up. She then found it really difficult. The quote that stood out most to me was that she would explain to people that she was half Jamaican and half Jewish, but it was easier for her to say that than to believe it, because it was just very difficult to kind of picture herself in both shoes, and just the extreme, I guess, questioning of her own ethnic background or her own racial background. That was really interesting to me and stood out. And I guess it's my turn now.
Pop.
Hop it over to Daniel.
Oh, thank you. So when I looked at all the quotes, there was one quote by a Jewish man of color who was talking about how now that people are wearing masks, people are even more afraid of him when he's walking around. And I was just thinking about that as a man. When I walk around with a mask, I also see that people are sometimes afraid. And so I just related to that, and I just thought how much more it would be if people were afraid of me based on my race.
Thank you all so much. You really shared your feelings, and you really took ownership of how that quote made you feel. So I appreciate that. And that is how you get the teens in your group to participate, by calling on each other. They each have an opportunity to kind of be the leader and to pass it along to somebody else. And it makes it real simple that you're not calling on everybody as the group leader. So we just shared with you today a few things to kind of draw your kids out, to draw your participants out, have them participate, mix it up a little, that you're not always leading, giving these teens opportunity to lead some of that, to some of the session. And we hope this was very helpful. We plan on making more of these videos. If you need support, please reach out to the regional director or the staff member that you know most. If you need other help, please write to support@movingtraditions.org, and we'll see you on the next video.